You're back, and we're glad you're back. Welcome to the Lion's Den for our second edition. I want to thank y'all. Over 11,000 people tuned in our last segment with Kenny Boone, and many of you reached out to me with so much inspiration. I shared that with Kenny, and do know that served in a powerful way in Kenny's journey. So thank y'all for watching, and thank y'all for tuning in today. We won't disappoint. We've got a man that I've admired sometime. We're kindred spirits. But before we get to him, which is truly going to be a treat, we want to thank a few people for supporting us and hope that you'll support them because they support us, starting with ARS Marketing. If you're looking for quality embroidered Richardson caps or polos like Under Armour, Nike, and Travis Matthew, then you need the professionals at ARS Marketing. This team has been doing branded products for business and government agency for over 30 years. With over 1 million other branded products, we have you covered completely with tangible advertising. Visit our website or call us for details, arsmarketing.com, or call 843-774-0186. Thank you, Steve Johnson. Our next one is Discover Lee & Loeb homemade, lightweight, unique earrings. From bold pieces to everyday elegance, no two pieces are exactly alike. Each design is perfectly imperfect, crafted with intention and love for originality. Don't forget Mother's Day is Sunday, May 11th. Lee & Loeb makes the perfect gift for all moms located inside Merle Norman Lake City. Call 843-394-1494. And finally, young man by the name of Richard Berry, my brother, Berry Financial Group. We work diligently to build relationships and to prove ourselves worthy of the trust and confidence placed in us by each and every client who becomes a part of our Berry Financial Group family. Our services include income planning, Medicare supplements, legacy and life insurance planning, retirement strategies, long-term care, estate planning, and tax services. We specialize in helping our clients in their efforts to achieve financial independence. Every client of Berry Financial Group is treated as a member of our family with whom we want to develop a caring and lasting relationship. Call 888-774-6181. We thank you for our sponsors, and please patronize them as you will. All right, for our next edition of the Lion's Den, I'm super excited. This guy that I've met here, let me go ahead and throw the name out. You know him better than you know me. And that is one Bryan Braddock. Man, we're excited to have you
Glad
here
to be
today.
Here. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Even though you pushed it now, you had me sweating.
Coming in, right in the last minute, what I mean? Make it interesting.
Just glad you're here, brother.
Yes, sir. Glad for the invite.
Bryan, I think we teased a little bit with the 9 lives of Bryan Braddock because he's done a little bit of everything. But before we get going, I want to have a little fun here. Zeb, who produces this and allows us to use the studio, can you got that picture of me and Bryan a couple of years ago? See if we can't pull that up. We'll have a little fun with this.
Ooh, there's some memory lane right there.
That's 2 nose guards.
That's right, large and in charge.
That's Sweet Debbie right there in between us. That's the Alzheimer's luncheon that we participate in every year. But gosh, I bet you both of us were 60 pounds heavier in that position.
Oh, easy. I know I was in 240s, 250 range.
I was 254.
Yes, sir.
And feeling every bit of it.
I would have looked good in that program as a nose guard.
Yeah, the funny thing about that, I told my friends, I was actually kind of mad at them. Here I was walking around thinking that I was still looking like a linebacker, and indeed I was looking like a nose guard.
So, yeah, well, a good friend encourage you in a, and not tell you everything that a mirror would.
Well, I may have a little issue there.
That's right.
Tell me, man. Tell me.
Right.
Don't let me walk around like that.
Yeah, don't let me walk around with a fly down, please.
Anyhow, I feel a lot better. I'm sure you do too.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah, game changer.
Well, let's dive in, man. And I think chronologically is the best way to go this because I can't wait to get to your book. We're going to save that for last.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But let's just start. What was it like being in the Braddock household growing up? What was your family like as a youngster?
So we grew up, I would say, lower middle class and moved around a lot. My dad was in the grocery store business, and I don't know if that had a lot to do with it, but I lived in Manning. Was born in Florence, lived in Manning for a little bit, and then came back to Florence. And I went to 3 different elementary schools, so we bounced around a pretty good bit, and then we moved out to Effingham when I was in junior high. and stayed out there pretty much the rest of the time. Graduated from South Florence.
South Florence, I knew that.
Bruin 1990. And
Okay.
proud
State
of those,
champions.
Yeah, 2 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, proud of that. And proud of Sellers and his younger brother's going to be at Carolina. So super excited about that. But I had, it was me. I had a sister that passed away when I was 4. She was 2. And then I had 2 other brothers. So there was 3 boys in the household. And, back then in the summer, you stayed at the house. So I was about 7 years older than my younger brother. So, I was 10, 11, 12, keeping them at the house. And, man, we'd take all the doors off the hinges, make forts, do all this stuff. And in 30 minutes before Mama got home, put the house back together again, and
but she would notice everything.
That's right.
My mom noticed everything.
Well, one time she collected bells and we broke one and we glued it back together, but we glued it to the piano. So she didn't find out until she went to dust the next time. But we were always breaking stuff, shooting stuff with BB guns. But
let me stop because it came to mind as we were speaking. Me and my brother, we were wrestling tough the whole time, and he actually would shoot me with a BB gun because I was so much bigger than him. And I'll never forget one shot in the house, and it nicked the cabinet. I mean, the nick wasn't like that. And the moment she walked into that door, what happened there?
Oh, man, they
had that kind of moment.
Yeah, they had eyes and noses. You know what I mean? I remember one time we smoked a cigarette. I was a teenager. It must have been 8:30 in the morning. She smelled it right time she walked in the door. Who's been smoking? But I grew up in a Christian household. We went to church. We were Pentecostal holiness. Went to Fellowship Assembly on Penn Isle Road, Twin Church Road. Now my Uncle Harry was the pastor, and we were at church on Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night.
You were
prayer.
embedded.
Man, Saturday night prayer meeting, Sunday morning jail ministry in the afternoon.
Gosh.
Sunday night we'd have conventions where we were at church all week. Revival, Vacation Bible School. So yeah, I grew up in the church, and until I was about a teenager, when I was 14, 15, my parents got separated, and I just accepted Christ as my Savior. I was 13, I think, and then they got separated. They divorced when I was 15, and I kind of went away from the church at that time. But that's a common story. And Kenny last week, certainly me too. You stray, but because of that upbringing, that 180 always occurs. Well, it's biblical. Train up a child in the way he should go, and he'll return to it. He, she,
And I'm sure your mama prayed for you every night, like mine did me, which I'm convinced made all the difference in my life. Yeah, which is why I pray for my son every day.
Amen. And I did. I was just always the one that got in trouble. I had 2 older cousins. And I was always the one who fell in the ditch and got wet. I was always the one, we'd all be doing the same things, and I'd be the one that got caught, and that's how it was. But, I just, I wasn't any worse than any other kids, but I was the one who got in trouble all the time. Yeah. And I remember during that time, I was taking these 2 guys to school, and we pulled into a convenience store, and they said, "Hey, Bryan, park beside this beer truck." And so I parked beside the beer truck. They sold 2 cases of beer out the beer truck. Yeah. So we pull into South Florence, and I got a cop pulls in front of me, one behind me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I got arrested at school, as a sophomore, 15 years old. And that kind of marked me, you know what I mean? As Bryan's a fun guy and a troublemaker. So, but it was rough, but it was fun.
Was sports part of your
Oh, absolutely.
high school experience?
Yeah, JV football. I played soccer. I lettered in soccer 3 years. I ran cross country. And,
oh, man.
Yes, sir. I could. My fastest time was, I think it was 18:21.
5K? Is that
5K?
Good,
yeah, about
man.
a 6-minute mile.
Outstanding.
And, I had a good time.
Yeah, I got you, but courtesy of the Marine Corps.
Well, that'd do it. Yeah, you're probably in the 17s. That's
No. The 300 PFT is what they called it. It was maxing out in pull-ups, sit-ups, right, Zeb? Pull-ups, sit-ups, and 3-mile run. Well, when I was in Okinawa, Japan, I was married at the time, and all I did was PT, right? 18:02. I missed it by
there you go.
2 seconds.
19 seconds.
Yeah.
And I was at Fort Jackson. We did state, and that's
Okay.
where we were in. State was at Fort Jackson, so it had these hills and everything.
Oh,
so,
that makes a big
man,
difference
well,
in a
well,
flat
we need to train
surface.
and we need to rerun. I want to run that back. It'll probably be 32 and 31. but-
Brother, I don't think I still got that in me any longer. Been nice if we tried it at 250, wouldn't
yeah,
it?
no.
We're
Oh, my
lucky to
God,
finish it
yeah,
all.
I'd finish in the hospital.
Oh, well, before we leave that part of your life, did you wear long hair in high school?
I did.
You know why I know? Unbeknownst to you. So I got a friend of a friend of a friend. When they knew I had developed a friendship with you, and I won't say who, but had a crush on you in high school. And said, yeah, he used to have that long hair, and he was a little heartthrob. I said, Bryan Braddock?
Oh, yeah.
And they said, yeah, Bryan Braddock. So,
I had it. It was all the way down to my shoulders, and
So they're telling me the truth.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
trying to look like Patrick Swayze, and then in college it was all one length. So I went from Patrick Swayze to Jim Morrison. I was trying to look like Jim Morrison.
the Doors.
That's right.
For the younger generation that don't know. Well, let's keep the progression up. So after high school, what kind of path did you take then, Bryan?
So I went to Francis Marion, and then
Yeah.
there I rushed ATO, continued, living like everybody else. Took me 6 years to get out of Francis Marion, but there I met Tracy, my wife of it'll be 29 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
congratulations.
May 25th. Yeah,
With a house full of girls too.
with a house full of girls, 5 girls: Hannah, Haley, Hayden, Holly, and Hope. Yeah, 24 to 10. So I met her there, and we got engaged and married right after I graduated. So I graduated, we got married, and moved up to Greenville, lived up there for a little bit, and after 1 year up there, we came back to Florence with our tail tucked between our leg and moved in with her parents and got a new foundation, and then started going to church and just started doing, like a new couple's supposed to do, and go to church. Had our first child after 4 years of being married, Hannah, who's now 24 and has our first grandson, Rowan.
Congratulations.
So there we were a young couple. We were going to church. We were teaching 7th grade boys Sunday school, which is like a tour of duty, doing that, and things were going pretty good.
I don't want to dwell on this part because your story's been well documented, but there'll be some out here that don't know, and you don't shy away from this because it's made you who you are.
Right.
But there was a very dark time in your life. Do you care to speak about that?
Absolutely.
That's
So
part of your testimony, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, was married for a while, and I bought a landscaping business, and I was running that landscaping business, and I had all these 18, 19-year-olds just zooming around, like buzzsaws, and I hurt my back. I was cutting a tree down, and I hurt my back, and I started taking pain pills, opioids for the back pain, and then I found out what had them zooming around was Adderall, so I started taking Adderall, and so I was taking prescription pain medication. I was, taking some Adderall from some of the guys working with me, and long story short, it developed into a daily 10 to 15 Percocet, gram of Coke addiction, about a $300 a day drug addiction. Yeah, that went on for about 5 years, and I went from landscaping to real estate during that time. But at 33 years old, I was losing everything. My house was in foreclosure. My car was being repossessed. I had been arrested for possession. And so at 33, that's when the Lord put the brakes on things.
Amen, brother. That's such a powerful statement there. And what we're going to dig into next, how the Lord brought you out of that, because Bryan, everybody knows your story. He's used you in an amazing way. Again, when I first met you, I think I can kind of remember when it was. It was a big Republican function, and I was there with the congressman. You were running for mayor for the first time, and I didn't know you. And somebody said, well, have you met Bryan? I said, no, and I think that's where we met. But I remember there were so many bigger politicians on the ticket that year that I said, look, he's kind of getting lost in the crowd, but he's sticking it. I had a lot of admiration because you were sticking in there, just talking, just working it. And I said, there's something to that guy. And then as our travels brought us together so often, we became kindred spirits. And by the way, you're one of my favorite people.
Oh, likewise.
I'm not
my
saying
friend.
this because of the cameras. You know that because we have so many similar experiences. So let's move from that darkness, and I'm guessing here, did the House of Hope, did that follow? Is that when you became the director of House of Hope shortly after that? Just got us through that.
So at 33, I'm hopelessly addicted. I go to a faith-based Christian program called Reformers Unanimous in Rockford, Illinois. 6-month inpatient. I went there, graduated on Mother's Day in 2007. And there, I was saved. I was a believer, but I had never developed a daily personal relationship with Christ. I had fire insurance, but I had no relationship. And I truly got an understanding of who God was. The devil, told me that God was just suppressing me and had his thumb on me and, was holding me back from what I wanted to do. But that wasn't the truth. And I learned that, that instead of going to pills and drugs and alcohol, that I could go to the Lord, for the things going on in life. So finished that program, came home for about a year, got called into full-time ministry and submitted my life to full-time ministry and ended up going back and running that program for 5 years in Rockford, Illinois. The men's home. And so I was up there and we were having our fourth little girl. We were having Holly and, in Rockford, Illinois, there's snow on the ground from Halloween to Easter.
No, thank you.
No flip-flops. And we didn't have family around, and Tracy was ready to get back home. And so I tell people that Holly was born up north, but her first word was y'all, because within 6 weeks we had her back down here. And so,
Good for
so
y'all.
we moved back down here, and I was looking for different things to do. And I got a call from Dean Lisenby. He was on the board of the House of Hope. Dean was actually my one phone call. So I got arrested, and Dean was my Sunday school teacher. And I called him from jail and said, hey, would you tell Tracy that I'm in jail and what's happened? Well, 8 years later, Dean calls me and asks me to interview for the job at the House of Hope as the executive director. And that's how I ended up at the House of Hope a little over 10 years ago.
I didn't know much about the House of Hope, and I've been to, I think, 2 of the big events you have where you have a marquee person come in. But I remember you guys building those tiny homes. You had you really advanced. And I know you hire good people, and I know they had a lot to do with it, but you really guided that to a whole different level, Bryan.
Well, I tell people, I had a business background. I had a degree in economics. I'd run 2 businesses, landscaping and real estate. And so I give that success, one, to my faith. I don't have to dig up faith that God's going to do stuff in my life, because I've seen it. I mean, I don't have to believe to see the miracles of God in the land of the living. I have seen the miracles of God in the land of the living. So I just had an incredible faith, but I brought business to the nonprofit world. And that's like being an NFL player and playing in college, because nonprofit is the mentality is that you don't have to apply, use the same business principles that make businesses successful in nonprofit, but it couldn't be more from the truth. So I brought that business mentality in, and having that perspective, I think, was a lot of the reason for the success. Now, I do want to say that first year at the House of Hope was very tough. The ministry was failing. I had to let go of half of the staff. We bounced checks. I had to call the bank to cover payroll 3 times in a row. We found out we were pregnant with our 5th little girl, Hope, and then we found out that Hope had trisomy 18, a genetic disorder. I got hired January 13th, and then on December 5th, my daughter Hope passed away. And so it was a very tough time, but that first year, the House of Hope was in the black for the first time in like 3 or 4 years. And so it was very tough. It was trial by fire, but after that, God just he tremendously blessed that ministry. Continues to do so.
Not to digress, but I think I recall that you had a daughter pass away, and I can't help but notice your tattoo, Hope.
Yes,
I
Romans
just assumed
15,
that was
13.
House of Hope, but that's sure.
Well, a funny story. So we have Hannah, Haley, Hayden, Holly, and Hope. And so we had to name her an H name, and so I actually thought it was kind of hokey to name her Hope because of the House of Hope. But after she got her diagnosis, there wasn't a better name for her, And so I only have one tattoo. It's Romans 15:13. It says, "Now the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing that you may abound in hope through the power of the Holy Ghost." And I got this tattoo because I needed to be reminded that my hope was not in a person, place, or thing. My joy, my peace came from the Lord. And,
Number one.
My wife cried herself to sleep 3 years in a row.
Yeah. Tracy, I hadn't really got to know her that well, but man, what a
She doesn't like
blessing.
she doesn't like the public eye.
I get it, but what a
She's a rock.
yeah, no doubt. I see the emotion on you, and I can appreciate that so much. So the House of Hope, I mean, you did elevate that tremendously, and I know you touched a lot of lives. And I remember seeing Daryl Strawberry, Ben Carson. I mean, you guys just really had some phenomenal people.
Kirk Cameron, Tim Tebow.
And that's such a testament of God and what He can do and how He used you. I mean, when we walk with the Lord, it's still tough, man. I go through it too, but
I tell people he used Balaam's donkey. If he can use a jackass, he can use me. So
he can use another jackass, right?
That's right.
So I can't wait to get to the man's an author too, and I full disclosure, I admitted to him that I hadn't had a chance to read the book, but I did read some excerpts. But before we dive into that, I think we entitled some of the promo as "The 9 Lives of Bryan Braddock," unbeknownst to you because you've done so much. But you were elected city council here. How long ago was that, Bryan?
So it's been 4 years.
4 years.
I tell people I got my felonies before politics, not after. So actually, from my addiction, I ended up with 4 felony charges: 2 breach of trust on some real estate transactions with my real estate business, and then 2 bad checks because I was flipping houses. So I had 4 felonies, and it had been several years, and we had started a homeless court at the House of Hope to help people who had gotten charges while they were homeless. They were in this situation, and if it was vagrancy or shoplifting or something, because they were homeless, then they were able to, if they got in a program, take those charges off. Mm-hmm. And we had our first homeless court, and I was leaving with the guy who started it, George Cothran, a guy out of the law firm in Columbia. I can't think of it now. Nelson Mullins. Yeah. And we're walking out, and I said, "Man, George, I wish this was around in my heyday." And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I got 4 felonies." And he about fell out. He goes, what?
Most people would. I mean, the way you carry yourself, nobody would have. Well, had they not known, nobody would suspect that.
That's right. And I liken it to, when the lepers, when Jesus healed the lepers, one came back and to thank him. And he said, "Your faith has made you whole." And I believe that one that came back, you couldn't tell that he had leprosy. I think his scars were removed. I think the other ones, they were healed, but their scars remained. The one who came back, he was made whole. I don't think you could see the scars. And that's how I liken it in my life. That I could have used what God gave me, the liberty that God gave me to do other things, but I chose to serve Him with that. And but he was floored, and he said, "Bryan, I'm gonna represent you pro bono for a pardon." And I was like, well, praise the Lord. And then, I don't want to miss this opportunity. I got to have 2 witnesses for my pardon. And me and my wife were praying on a Wednesday night prayer meeting about who to bring. And we get done praying, and John Jeppetinger was my prosecutor. He's, assistant solicitor here. He's going to Dillon. He's going to be working with Birch here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. But John comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Bryan, I got notification that you're going for a pardon." And I said, "Yes, sir," because they notify your prosecutor if you go for this hearing. And he goes, "Well, I haven't done this in 30 years, but I want to be your witness."
Gosh.
And when a man's ways please the Lord. Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to get choked up to think about that, because of all the people you could have to be your witness, your prosecutor's the best one, right?
But who would have thunk it?
I would have never thunk it, I was doubting whether I should take Tracy. I didn't know if that was going to help me or hurt me, but I did get pardoned, and I ran for mayor, and I came up short in that race, but there was a change in city council. Someone a member had gone to county council and their seat was vacated. So I really took that momentum from running for mayor into that special election and won city council.
Had a lot of support. Matter of fact, I went the night y'all had your celebration party at Redbone. You may not remember, but there was a couple of people in Marion that believed in you so much. Said, Rodney, do you know Bryan? I said, well, I don't know him that well, but I do know him. I rode along with him that night. Yeah. So I was at Redbone.
I remember seeing you
night.
there.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Sure was.
Yeah.
But you had a
Brian Woodbury.
That's right.
Yeah.
You had a broad spectrum of support all over, people pulling for you. You have a way of uniting people. Before we move from city councils, any highlights that I know I just hit you with this?
Well, the city council, I would say some big things would be the opioid funds that came and being a part of, getting that out and utilizing that in the community and, really just being a voice for the underdog, for the least of these. And, certainly that was my background and having that experience, I really think that I was able to shed light, on certain situations and get funding for the No One Unsheltered program would probably be the biggest one. Drew came to us and said,
the former city manager.
City manager, we would have all these organizations come in front and they'd want $5,000 for this or $10,000 for this. And it just wasn't having the impact. It was Band-Aid. And he said, hey, come together and let's do something. I'm willing to put some money behind something, but let it have impact. And so all the homeless organizations came together. And what we realized is that at some points, beds would be open here and not here. So you go to Salvation Army, it'd be full, and they just turn you away, but House of Hope had beds. And so basically, long story short, the city put $75,000 towards it, and it was No One Unsheltered. And so if someone came to your facility and you were full, we would call around, find a place for them, provide transportation for them, and make sure that everyone had a bed.
That's a real result. So often I say that we duplicate so many things. Let's identify the best of the best and put all our funds there instead of having hodgepodge everywhere.
And identify one goal, and everybody go to that goal. And that goal was to make sure that everybody had a bed and was off the street.
Right.
And so at least, we were making sure that we were doing that.
City of Florence is lucky to have your expertise, brother. They really are. So if that's not enough for you, the man becomes a congressional aide to Congressman Fry. And I think you handle all his economic development activities. Speak a little bit on what it's like to work for a congressman.
Well, I've always had multiple jobs because I got a lot of children and I've been in a nonprofit. So, not a lot of money there, but
by necessity. Right?
I mean, as the executive director or CEO of the House of Hope, I'd be cutting grass for the board members, to make extra money.
I love
that.
But
he when he after he got elected, he asked me if I'd be his field rep, part-time field rep, and I did that. So I was CEO of the House of Hope and part-time field rep, and then when I left the transition from the House of Hope, went full-time. But I love it because my job then and my job now is to go to all the other municipalities in the district and work with them, and so. You get to learn best practices. I'm able to bring things back.
I hear you, but Florence is our flagship, so I think you get to share a lot of best practices. I mean, Clo, even Dylan and Marion. You guys have resources, and which resources comes knowledge. So you're able to. I know folks in Dylan and Marion. That's where I spend most of my time. Have told me.
And that's really why the Congressman, Russell Fry, that's really why he wanted to bring me on board, because I spoke the language. I understood the situations. He felt like I could connect with the other municipalities and their delegation and understand and then be able to communicate to him what those things were. So, I love what I do. I love meeting, all the other mayors and council people, economic development, community leaders. You just get an insight into communities that you wouldn't any other way.
Right. Now, does this right here ring off the hook? Because mine certainly did. I think everybody in the PD's got my number, and I'm good with that.
I put mine down here. And but I learned, hey, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. So I had a predecessor in my role, and that's Rodney Berry with our previous congressman. And I've never been able to do the job like he did because
Oh, that's
he
not true.
never, every time I called you, you answered that phone.
I appreciate that.
every time. And so,
I
and
answer
I'm
it-
not just
I
saying that
answer it
just
because
to,
it's Bryan Braddock.
oh my goodness. Well, I'm not saying that to blow sunshine. I mean, truly, you were a model for how to do this.
Oh, gosh,
this
thanks,
role.
man. I
and
appreciate that.
you know, I modeled myself after you, and I was really intimidated to get into this role. And people have the expectation, you know, of me doing it the way you did it.
Well, you've surpassed it, brother.
Just
So
do it different.
one more subject I want to touch on, because me and you talk quite often. I see you a lot because you're everywhere in business, but we also enjoy each other socially and personally as well. But we did have this conversation, and when we had it, it made a lot of sense to me because I'm a Neanderthal. You have to tell me things. I think I experienced exactly what you've experienced, but we talked the other day about servant fatigue. And I'm going to tell you, it just resonated with me so much. So we've got friends that are probably experiencing the same thing and don't know because they can't name it, but you named it. Let's talk about, because you were a servant in every aspect of your life. Let's talk about that for a moment, and then we'll get to your book.
Compassion fatigue. I had been serving for 5 years. I served the addicted in Rockford, and then came to the House of Hope for 10 years and serving, you know, those in need. And, you know, the homeless and the addicted are, and I would say domestic people and domestic violence are some of the most needy people, you know, and I am one, so I guess I can say that. But you pour into people, and you pour into people, and when you're doing it right, you're in your Bible every day, you're walking with the Lord every day, and you got something to give them.
But you're emptying.
But you're emptying out. I mean, every day, and you gotta refill the tank, and then, you know, if you're not spiritually there, you know, sometimes, you know, you're just not refilling it. But after time, you can become jaded, you know, and you can become callous, and you can have what's called compassion fatigue, and you start, you know, instead of looking at people as people, you start looking at them as numbers and clients and this and that and the other, and that's where I was. I was just burnt out, you know, after 15 years of serving people and had a good run in both ministries and a lot of growth. I found myself frustrated. I found myself fatigued physically, emotionally, spiritually. I didn't have anything to give anybody, to give my wife, to give my children. And I've seen people continue on in ministry, and they just and they go into a different realm where they go from ministry to a position. And I didn't want to do that, you know, and so I knew the time was the time, and I didn't want to like pop off at somebody and say something, and I also didn't want to get myself in a spiritually weak position where I did something stupid that could have a huge negative impact on the ministry.
Well, you could be vulnerable when
when
you're
very,
drained.
very, and not necessarily that I would have, you know, relapsed or anything like that, but just someone comes to you for help and they know your background, and then you hurt them with your words. It's one thing if it was their mother or their boss or their father or someone that they hurt, but someone that they're coming to for help, you know, if you don't get that grace and love and mercy from them, then it can have a huge negative impact. And you know, I got to that point, and I was like, you know what, I got to take a break.
Good for you for recognizing that when you can't give it your all, you know.
That's it.
Yeah, outstanding.
And it's a different, when you're in ministry, you're working and representing the Lord. You know, and I know he kicked over the tables, you know, with the money changers and stuff like that. But you know, he's a God of love and grace and mercy, and the Bible says, "By mercy and truth, iniquity is purged, and men depart from evil." And sometimes people get too heavy on the truth side, sometimes too heavy on the mercy side. But if you're not balanced, if you don't have that balance, then you really can't help people out of these tough situations.
Yeah, amen. Well, thank you for putting a name to it, because it really did resonate with me. Slide that book over here to me, man. The dude's an author too. Great.
Well,
you caught me by surprise on. Well, go ahead.
Well, I got to tell you, my daughter, all my daughters read, but the 12-year-old, she proofed it for me, and and she says, I said, hey, dad's a writer. And she goes, no, Dad, there's writers and there's authors. Anybody can be an author, but writers are different. Anybody can be a father, but dads are different. You know what I mean?
Nothing like family.
Yeah, that's right.
To bring you back down.
The 12-year-old, really, and they, when people would say, oh, Bryan, you're locally famous, they would say, yeah, Dad's lamest. So those girls that keep me even. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe we just didn't talk about it, but you kind of kept this a secret. I didn't know that you even had a book until I saw on Facebook where it arrived at your home. You did a little post on that. So it's called Take the Soap. And we're going to talk about this because although I haven't read it all, and I'm going to, I did read an excerpt from it, and man, it was powerful. I mean, I could feel it. I think Zeb has a little excerpt that I'll try to read from this distance on the screen. But
I can read that far. It's close to that outro. Yeah.
So let me read this. Oh man, this hit me too, because I do have a passion for the homeless as well. I mean, I just do, because I think I go back to this. What if that was my son walking? My son's getting ready to graduate from med school, going up to Tennessee in a day or two to just call him doctor. But circumstances can happen. And that could be my son on the side of the road, And so it should touch everybody, because all of us are not necessarily a paycheck, but moments.
Except for the grace of God, there go I.
There go I, yeah. So let me read this. How did I rob him, I asked. People with money always, so who's speaking here is we'll talk about him in a minute, but it's a gentleman that you met that was homeless, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he says, people with money always think they're the givers, he explained, and that the poor and homeless are always the takers. But did it ever occur to you that someone with less money, less education, or less status than you could still have something to give? You don't know what that man has been through. Amen. He might know more about life than you do in ways you can't even imagine. And if you had looked at him a little, with a little humanity, maybe you would have accepted his gift. His words hit me hard. In the pages ahead, you'll see what I learned from this experience. And the next time you offered a small, unexpected gift or a kindness, take the soap. Mm-hmm. Blocking blessings. And it's so true. This may seem cliche, but the Lord ain't looking at your wallet.
Right.
He's looking at your heart,
That's it.
And what means so much to so many people, that nice car, that nice house, that's fine. You work hard for it. You deserve it. But humanity, brother, humanity. So this man lived on the street for a week of his own choice. And you do it with your words. Let's talk about this book and some of the experiences, Bryan.
Yes, sir. So like I was telling you before we started, when I was the Dean of Men at the Addictions Facility, Reformers Unanimous, it was the program that I had gone to, so I knew what it was like to be that guy on the other side of the desk. I had been there, I had stolen $20 out of my mom's pocketbook. I had broken in the house to steal the microwave to pawn it, and I knew the hurt, that my mom had and all that. And I also knew, the potential, if you give your life over to the Lord. But anyway, I connected with those people in ministry. When I went to the House of Hope, I'd never been homeless per se. I had times where I lived with my in-laws, but I'd never been homeless. And so, we were doing all these good things, but there was still a disconnect. I still lacked an understanding. And so when I'm putting these policies and working with my team, put these things in place, we just felt like something was missing. And so I had a homeless guy reach out to me. He saw me in the paper, called me, and I left me a message. And I have a website, takethesoap.com, and you can actually listen to that message on the website and see the documentary and stuff like that. But he said, hey, I see that you're helping the homeless. I'm homeless, and I'd love to meet you and see if we could collaborate and work together. And it was just strange enough, and my heart was right to do it. So I reach out to this guy, start developing a relationship, and I have breakfast with him, and I keep asking him, what's it like to be homeless, and asking all these questions. And he finally just got frustrated and said, man, there's no way I can tell you what it's like to be homeless until you're homeless. You know what I mean? And walk a mile in my shoes.
And you took that literally.
Yeah, and I took that literally, much to my wife's chagrin.
Tracy.
Yeah, God bless
Bless
her.
you.
So long story short, we decided that we were going to be homeless. We were going to go to a town city that neither one of us had been to. We were going to try to capture it. We had a little film crew, low budget film crew come and follow us and capture some of that experience. The documentary's on the website as well. But we lived for homeless for a week. We got dropped off on a Sunday in Augusta. It was pouring down rain, 40
So
degrees.
Augusta's no joke. I've back in my college days, we'd run down there to the red district zone. That area down there is no joke, man.
And I didn't know that, so we didn't know anything
Should
about
ask me.
Augusta. That's right. We didn't know anything about Augusta, and we wanted that. I didn't want, if I did it around here, somebody would see me and pick me up or give me a cheeseburger or something. But we just got dropped off. We had bare minimum. We had, a lighter, bottle of water, a little backpack. We, just a few items, and lived as homeless person for a week. And in that week, I gained more knowledge and understanding of what it was like to be homeless in that 1 week experience than I would have never gained it. He was right. That was the only way for me to experience it. And even though I wasn't truly homeless and I had an end date, people didn't know that. I knew that. Mm-hmm. But the homeless people didn't know that, and the regular people didn't know that. And so they treated me like a homeless person. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? Well, that means that people would go to the other side of the street instead of, pass me by. If I'd say, hey, they wouldn't acknowledge me. They looked down on me. They laughed at me. They cursed at me. They ignored me. And the homeless people, they even had insights into me that I didn't know, which was part of the Take the Soap experience.
Yeah, go ahead, dwell in that.
Yeah,
now.
so basically we came across this guy who was homeless, and he was sitting on the corner, and as we approached him, you could tell he was homeless. He had the book bag and all that, and as we approached him, my friend said, "Hey, man, what you got there?" Because he could tell he had something in his hands, and he says, a can of chicken and 3 bars of soap. You want one? And my homeless friend, No Cash is his name, YouTube guy, he says, sure, receives the soap and, goes, just continues the dialogue. And the guy looked at me and he said, what about you? And I said, no, I'm good. I didn't think anything about it, and I don't know why in my mind. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to get a shower or whatnot, but truly I didn't want to, take the man's soap,
right.
And so
blocking that blessing that we just read.
And I had no idea. And so we continue on, and we're walking down the road, and basically No Cash and this guy, they're dialoguing, and I'd try to get in the conversation. The guy wouldn't have anything to do with me. He just wouldn't even acknowledge me. And so we were together a couple hours. He showed us where the local food bank was, and we parted ways. And I said, hey, Beyond, what was wrong with that guy? He didn't really have anything to do with me. And the guy was a white guy, so it wasn't a racial issue. He was about the same age as me. And he said, without hesitation, you didn't take the soap. And I was like, what do you mean I didn't take the soap? I mean, and he said, man, why do you think that man was sitting there on that corner? I said, I don't know. He goes, he was sitting there waiting for somebody to come by that he could bless.
Wow.
It's better to give than receive, and he had extra. And he was just waiting for someone to bless. And then for whatever reason, you didn't think it was good enough. And you blocked his blessing.
Wow.
And man, it was a gut punch.
Yeah.
Because it never occurred to me that a homeless person was going to try to give me something, because he wanted to help me. And that's where what you read, where I come to understand that, there's people in our lives every day, and because we think that we're better than them or we know more than them, then we don't accept what they have to offer. And what that does is that devalues them, that degrades them. If I go to you and I want to give you something and you don't take it, well, we don't even know what that's like, because we give people stuff and they take it. But if I did do that and you didn't take it, what would that mean to me?
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't this guy, he's homeless and he doesn't want soap. I mean, he's going to need it and he can't get it. And so having that understanding, that happened early on, I was like, that's the first takeaway. take the soap. Be willing to receive from those, and I didn't realize it. I couldn't go back to our accounts, but I'm sure there were times that the people that we were serving, because reciprocity, right? You do for somebody, they want to do for you. And as we're doing for these homeless people that we're serving, they're wanting to give back and give back. And we're constantly saying no, 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 no. Right. And so they don't get the gratification of returning the favor, returning the blessing, the reciprocity,
Gotcha.
that you get. And man, it was just it was an eye opener.
Are there various cultures? Did you find there were various cultures in the homeless? I mean, is some of them there by their want to, or is it all drug infested? Or are there different cultures within?
So I would say that nobody was there because they wanted to. Everybody has a story, and basically the people that we met on the street and the stories that we heard, and because I was homeless now, I was getting the true story. If you go up to a homeless person and you say, hey, how you doing, blah, 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 well, they're going to tell you whatever story that they think that you want to hear to get whatever they need.
A lot of them kind. I mean, a lot of them are.
Well, not necessarily kind. They're survival. They're in survival mode. I mean, there's some that are out there. Hey, I tell people there's bad policemen, there's bad preachers, and there's bad homeless people.
Right.
But in the most part, they're in survival mode. And if you're trying to get a room for the night or get a meal or whatnot, you're going to tell people whatever they want to hear. But as a homeless person, I got the real story, and pretty much all of them had a job. Pretty much, a lot of them demographically, they were like society. Certain percentage college degree, high school, no degree. Mental illness was big, and addiction was prevalent. But whether it was the cart or the horse, whether they became addicted because they were homeless or their addiction led to homelessness. But for the most part, nobody wanted to be there, but there was folks that I feel like found their place there. And when I say that, you got to think, homelessness is at the bottom ring of society. Well, if you're if you're good at being homeless, in the homeless society, you're at the top. So in
there's a hierarchy.
This portion of, and it's all based off of what you know, not what you have, because nobody has anything. Right. But it's based off of he's the guy. Good. You need something, go to that guy.
Gotcha.
So as a homeless person, if you've managed to do it a while and get good at it, you got value there.
Well, never thought of that.
So why would you want to shift from where you have value to back to the bottom rung?
Right.
And so I think the lifers, so to speak, they just become efficient.
Was it predominantly a transitional people coming in and out, or did you find that a lot of people settled? I mean, were there?
I think that a great, I would say 20% had been homeless for more than 1 year, and you would call that, I can't even remember the word now, but that's a different level of homelessness if you've been homeless for over a year. It's just, once you become homeless, your life, all of our lives are a circle. You know what I mean? Or a bubble, or, like we're planning for vacations, right? 3 months, 4 months, down the road. We're planning for retirement. We're planning for these things. A homeless person is planning that next meal, that next place of shelter. And so they live in a 24-hour circle.
Gotcha.
Whereas we have a calendar year or a month or whatnot. And so it's hard when you wake up. When I woke up day 2, 20 things that I never thought about needing, I needed. Right. Shower, toothpaste, toothbrush, a bathroom. Yeah. You know what I mean? Clean clothes, dry socks, all that stuff that we don't even think about.
Yeah, weather, I guess, wreaks havoc.
Yeah, man. I mean, your clothes get wet, and there's nowhere to get a shower. There's nowhere to wash your clothes. And so once you get in that circle and people say, why don't they get a job? Well, to get a job, you gotta be clean. You gotta have transportation. You gotta have an address, to put on the application. Right. It's
so difficult.
Oh my goodness.
Almost impossible.
Almost impossible. Well, it is impossible. Without the help of somebody else, there's no way to, without getting into a program or some kind of thing like that, there's no way to do it. But I found the impediments to that were one thing that we changed at the House of Hope is that we used to require an ID to get into the shelter. You know, we want to know who you were. I mean, that just makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to have an ID. Well, I didn't realize that. You know how sex trade people take over women, control women. They take their ID.
Mm-hmm.
And if I got your ID, you can't get in a hotel room. You can't get a plane ticket. You can't. I think you might be able to get a bus. You couldn't check into the House of Hope at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't do anything without an ID.
Right.
And so you got to go back to that John, right?
Yeah.
He controls you. Mm-hmm. And so if you get mugged and you lose your ID or whatnot, then how can you get in? So we made it where you didn't have to have an ID, but we had to identify you in 3 days. And we could do that through Facebook and this and that and the other. You know, but just little things like that impede things. Also in Augusta, in order to go in a shelter, you got to go to the police station and you got to get a shelter clearance form pass. Mm-hmm. So if you got a breach of trust or you think you got a breach of trust or whatnot, you got to go to the jail. They're going to run a background check and they will either clear you where you can go in a shelter or you're going to get arrested. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you're out on the street and you need to get to a shelter, but you don't want to, you know, you're late on your child support or something, you're just not going to do it.
Right.
And I just didn't realize that.
Was prostitution a big part of that environment?
Oh my goodness. You know, if anything, as a homeless person, you know, being a male is just totally different, because as a woman, not only are you extremely vulnerable, but two, you have a means of survival that men don't have, but that costs you everything. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? Right. And if you're in survival mode and every single day it's that next meal, it's that next, you know, whatever, and then ultimately it becomes that next fix or whatnot. But you know, that's a tough place.
The week you were there, did you experience any ministry? Did you have anybody coming down?
Yeah, we
sharing
did.
The gospel? Did you?
Yeah, they had Under the Bridge Church, which was neat. You know, so they had all these nonprofits. It was under the bridge under overpass, you know, and they set up chairs and I remember the pastor said, one thing at Under the Bridge Church is nobody will ever get an argument about the color of the carpet. You know what I mean? So, you know, they just set out chairs and then the, you know, groups would come with food and clothes and this and that and the other. You know, that was huge. We went to the master's table, which was the local food bank, you know, that was providing food and things like that. And so, yeah, there was a lot of good people out there, you know, loving on those. One thing I will say at that Under the Bridge Church, they took up an offering. And, you know, even having that Take the Soap experience, I'm still thinking, oh, man, I mean, you're going to ask the homeless for an offering.
Never would have thought of such a thing.
Right. But, man, they were talking about a cheerful giver. They were excited to give because their whole week, God, talking about, we don't even know what the verse, his eyes on the sparrow and I know he watches me. Uh-huh. We don't even know what that means. But if you're homeless, you do. And so an opportunity to give the Lord 25 cents, 50 cents, $2, whatever, they were cheerful givers. They were looking forward to it. And I'm telling you, it's a whole different.
I've seen your eyes. You were blessed by that whole experience.
It was something that everybody, it wasn't the job, your house, your income, your clothes, your car, everything that divides us, separates us, or that we think makes us better or different or special. Mm-hmm. It's all gone on the street. Yeah. Everybody's on the same playing field. All that fakeness is gone.
Gone. Yeah.
And so you're just, I met the truest people that you'll ever meet on the streets.
Oh gosh, I'm so sensitive to those folks, but I'll tell you, you've even opened my eyes further in this short little conversation.
Well, it was just a week. You know, I had an end date. I knew that I was going to go home. You know, so I wasn't homeless. But everybody thought that I was, except for the guy that I didn't take the soap from.
Did you ever feel like you were in danger though?
Oh yeah, we had a guy. He didn't pull a gun on us, but he showed us his gun. We're sleeping on the streets. We had the police run us off from a place that we were staying, and if it's one thing, people say, well, you just camped out for a week. Man, when I go camping, I got my stuff, my food, my sleeping bag. I'm under the stars. Camping in
totally different element.
Yeah,
I
camping
camp all
in
the time.
Yellowstone versus camping behind a building on the streets of Augusta.
Right.
It ain't camping, brother. When you hear a sound, you don't know if it's a dog, a possum, a raccoon, or somebody who's lost their mind. So it's different.
Well, listen, Bryan, I don't want to leave a thing out. Is there anything that comes to mind that you want to share before we conclude here? Please do, because this is powerful. I know I'm gonna get comments all week.
Well, I would just say, and I don't want to. I'm not trying to self-promote.
Please, I was going to ask you, how do we get this?
You can get it on Amazon. And Take the Soap. It's by Bryan Braddock, inspired by No Cash Beyond McCullough. You can also go to takethesoap.com. You can watch the documentary. You can order the book. I'm forming a nonprofit. The royalties for this book will be split between me and Beyond and the homeless. The House of Hope will be a recipient of those two. So,
great. Good stuff.
But this book is a 200-page gospel tract, so you take the soap is one thing from an individual, but the Bible says, "But ye are washed." You're cleansed by the power of the Holy Spirit, by the renewing of your soul in the blood of Christ. You know what I mean? So Jesus Christ is on that street corner every day, wanting to wash us Christians of all the muck and mire that we've drug ourselves through, and wanting to clean up those who've never known, the power of Jesus Christ and the salvation, in Him. And so the book ends with an opportunity to take the soap from the one who can truly wash you.
Gosh, if not a soul watches this, I myself have been blessed here today, brother. I love you, man.
Likewise.
I do.
Appreciate you
so much. Hope you enjoyed this edition of Lion's Den. It's everything that I thought it would be here today. Join us every week. If you'd like to be a guest, email me, rodneyberry22@gmail.com. We'd love to have you. If you'd like to be a sponsor, email that as well. We look forward to seeing you next time. Hope you have a great week. And Bryan Braddock, thank you. Got to thank, I know you said she don't like the limelight. This night, Tracy, thank her for standing by you all this time. Behind every good man is a what?
A good woman.
A good woman.
A better woman. Now,
Same for Zeb back there, too.
I got to enjoy her as much as I can on earth, because when I get to heaven, she's going to be way up there.
You can't reach.
She's going to be in a different zip code. So.
I don't believe that, but nevertheless. Thank y'all. See you next time on the Lion's Den. We also stream live on YouTube. Just look Rodney Berry. I think it's in the Lion's Den. Just do it that way. You'll get there, okay? See you next time.